This is your Democrat Party. If you vote for them, if you vote blue, if you've been voting along this party line your entire life, oh, it's the Workers' Party. That's bullshit. Welcome to Can He Be Unchained? Kenny Broner. Okay, so now we're here. It's the 25th of July, 2020. I kind of wanted to go over a few things coming up on this show here. Okay, number one, big shout out to Louis. Gohmert. The other day, the 23rd, he dropped a bomb on Congress. He dropped a bomb on the Democrat Party. All right, an absolute bomb. So what he basically did is he took an amendment they were passing through to get rid of these Confederate statues or these Confederate busts of former speakers of the House because they were pro-slavery. And what he did is he spun it over on the Democrats. He hit them at their own game. He hit them right where it hurts. All right. A lot of people don't realize this, but the Democrat Party, they were pro-slavery. The Democrat Party oppressed black Americans for 100 years until civil rights passed. The Republicans have been on their side the entire time. And today, black Americans overwhelmingly vote for the Democrat Party, their oppressors, in outlandish numbers. Trump got 8% of the black American vote. So you're talking 92% of those who voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. They voted blue in 2016. That is insane. That is insanity. It's absolute insanity, especially when you're talking about just the privileges, not even just the privileges, the issues behind it, right? So if you actually looked into all the issues, all the stuff that the Democrat Party's for, like it just does not make sense. It does not make sense that to go that overwhelmingly in one direction without doing proper homework and research first. So how they get that vote is by guilting people into it. As Joe Biden said, you ain't black if you don't vote for him. You ain't black if you don't vote for the Democrat Party. That is insane. That is straight racism. Are you going to vote for your slave masters? Because that's what you're doing if you're voting for Joe Biden. You're voting for your slave masters. You're voting for all the issues we have in all these inner cities throughout. Okay. So what I want to do today is I want to kind of, because when you listen to a bill over on the House floor, often they have to say it so fast because they have time limits, they have restrictions. I want to dive into what Gohmert was talking about. Maybe if you're a Democrat, you should know a little bit about the history of the Democrat Party and what they were for and what they were all about. It was all about oppression. Vote for us. Vote for us. We'll give you free stuff. You want free? Huh, free? Just fill out your name right here. Fill it out. Say yes for me. Fucking Democrats. Okay. So he starts off, okay, because he's talking about a clause that was brought to the House floor the day before. House Resolution 7573. I'm not going to dive in and read this all exact. I'm just going to kind of hit at all the points and kind of go into it. Okay. So this was about anyone, it says, the House floor for a vote the purpose of eliminating 4 specific statutes. Who served as an officer or voluntarily with the Confederate States of America or the military forces or government of a state while the state was in rebellion against the United States, yet failed to address the most ever-present historical stigma in the United States Capitol. And the source of those who supported, condoned, and fought for slavery was left untouched. So right there it's talking about how they are taking on these statues. Statues, let me be clear, the statues are all of Democratic House leaders. Busts of Democrat House leaders. Busts of Democrat House leaders. That is insane. They don't talk about that, though. They only want you to know that they were Confederate statues. They were pro-slavery, okay? It's complete and total hypocrisy. This is a huge reason why I decided to switch from being a liberal early in the 2000s to kind of being more level field, just because there's such blatant hypocrisy, and it's just absolutely insane. It's like how can we allow this to continue? How can we allow this party to continue to have power in this country when they are so blatantly racist, yet point the finger at the other guy and say he's racist, and people fall for it and believe it? Because they'll say that you're against welfare, you're against a whole group of people because you see a problem with the legislation that the Democrats have actually pushed forward. It's absolute insanity, and it has to end. Okay, so then Louis Gohmert goes into and starts talking about the Democratic Party platforms from 1840 to 1856. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what is that, 20 years. Over 20 years, and this is before the Civil War, okay? That the Congress has no power to interfere with domestic institutions of several states, that everything appertaining to their own affairs not prohibited directly by the Constitution, and that all efforts of abolitionists were people that were against slavery, and they're calculated to lead to the most alarming and dangerous consequences, and that all such efforts have a tendency to diminish the happiness of the people and endanger the stability and permanency of the country. So, if you were trying to free the slaves, you were impeding on the happiness of people. You were diminishing the happiness of people. How blatantly, obscenely racist is that? Go Democrats. Let's go Gohmert. All right, let's see some more. All right, and then he goes into talking about how the platform over those years declared that new states to the Union should be admitted with or without domestic state slavery. And it also resolves that the Fugitive State Law of 1850. Okay, he kind of bounces back and forth, because this is something like, I guess he had so much that he had to get into, that he wanted to get into, so he kind of like fast forwarded through. So the basic gist up until the Civil War, the Democrats were all pro-slavery. All right, that's what they were about. That was their thing. Okay, they're all pro-slavery. He starts talking about the Fugitive Slave Law of 1850, which penalized officials who did not arrest an alleged runaway slave and made them liable for a fine, which would be the equivalent to $28,000. Okay, so if any official impeded on this law, they were trying to fine them $28,000. That is insane. Just thinking about like $1,000 back then and how it weighs out to today, that's a lot of money. So you're willing to bankrupt people who are trying to help a worthy, a just cause. That's like absolutely. This is your Democrat Party. All right? So we'll keep going, okay? Now, the platform of 1960 he talks about in seeking to uphold the Fugitive Slave Act states that the enactments of state legislatures to defeat the faithful execution of the Fugitive State Law are hostile in character, subversive to the Constitution, and revolutionary in their efforts. So this is part of the reason why the Civil War started, right? You're not going to give us back our slaves. We're going to fight. We're going to fight you. We're going to overthrow you. We want our free labor. We want these people in chains. Yeah, they have to be in chains. Otherwise, we can't make do. Now, the 14th Amendment, this is after the Civil War, right? Fast forward a little bit. Okay. The 14th Amendment, giving full citizenship to freed slaves, passed in 1868 with 94% Republican support and 0% Democrat support. And I ask you this, I pose this question. I've been posing this quite a bit online over the past few months, right? if the Nazi Party had a platform switch, would they still be acceptable today? If they decided that, say in the 50s or the 40s, like after Hitler was taken out of office and the Nazi Party wanted to come back and be put on the ticket, and they just decided to like, oh, we're gonna go hand out gifts and baskets over to all the Jewish communities, Jewish hospitals, and we're really gonna switch platforms. Would they still be acceptable? No. If the KKK decided to start a political party today, and instead of, when they were back lynching black Americans years ago, if they decided like, oh no, instead we're gonna go to all these African American communities and just start handing out gifts. We're gonna start handing out gifts. Is that acceptable? As a platform change that oppressed people for so long, is that acceptable? They were not held accountable. They were absolutely not held accountable. And you could point out policies going straight through, even to this day, where they are just straight up oppressing their people. They're oppressing their communities. What are all the most violent cities in this entire country? Most of them, if almost all of them, are Democrat-run communities for decades. Decades. No good, doing nothing but sitting, holding a chair, and continuing on all the policies that are causing people harm. That's a Democrat Party today. That's a Democrat Party 100 years ago. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. All right, so we'll keep going on. So, when I was listening to this thing, I was like, oh my God, like Gohmert is just crushing them. I mean, he's always been an outspoken one. You hear him with his country accent. He starts going in because he's from Texas. And he almost gets like full on. They just kind of disregard him when he starts talking. It's like, I hear you, Gohmert. I know exactly what you're saying. I mean, you see the hypocrisy. A lot of people see the hypocrisy. There's so much going on right now with this Democrat Party. It's insane. It's insane. It has to be put to an end. Okay. So, 0% Democrat support for the 14th Amendment, giving full citizenship to freed slaves. 1970, giving free slaves the right to vote, the 15th Amendment. 100% Republican support. 100% Republican support. Goose egg for the Democrats. So those are two huge strikes on why the Democrat Party should be abolished. They should be eliminated today. They never paid for that. They never paid for that blatant racism. Now, they systematically suppressed black Americans' right to vote. One example he gives is in 1902, Constitution of the State of Virginia, which directly disenfranchised 90% of black men who still voted, and nearly half of the white men. And they suppressed Republican voters. The number of eligible black American voters were reduced from 147,000 in 1901 to 10,000 in 1905. So this is what, 40 years after slavery. 30, 40 years after slavery, the Democrat Party was still at it. They were still at it in Virginia. They decided to suppress that many votes. They suppressed 137,000 votes in Virginia. This is your Democrat Party. This is your Democrat Party. If you vote for them, if you vote blue, if you've been voting along this party line your entire life, oh, it's the Workers' Party. That's bullshit. Absolute bullshit. All right? So he keeps going. He starts talking about Democrat President Woodrow Wilson and what he claimed as a goal of the Constitutional Convention. Discrimination. Why? That is precisely what we propose. That exactly is what this convention was elected for, to discriminate to the very extremity of permissible action under the limits of the federal Constitution, with a view to the elimination of every, and Gohmert says I won't use this word because he obviously threw around one of the M words. Um, I don't think he threw the ER word. He probably threw the RO word, but still. Okay. But black American voters who can be gotten rid of legally. Let me say it again. To discriminate to the very extremity of permissible action under the limits of the federal Constitution, to eliminate, with the view to the elimination of every black American voter who can be gotten rid of legally. And he said he was applauded. And Woodrow Wilson, we're talking what? We're talking like 1900s up to, what was he? He was a Democrat president in 1912. So not even just that, like the country ended up voting him in. So that's like something to say against the whole country and how he gets voted in, right? And how he even got Democrat presidents voted into office. It's bizarre. It's absolutely bizarre. I mean, you can say the whole country was kind of racist around this time, but the Democrat Party were overwhelmingly like that. Now, he starts going on into 1912, where Democrat Woodrow Wilson began the racial segregation policy for U.S. government employees. And then in 1914, he issued a requirement for civil service that a photograph be submitted with each employment application, so you can see what they look like before you hire them. So that's another racist policy looking to keep people out of office. Insane. Keeping them out of government. Now, 1924, let's fast forward another 10 years, the DNC, Democratic National Convention, convened in New York, and it was commonly known as the Klan Bake, due to an overwhelming influence of the Ku Klux Klan in the Democrat Party. Which, if you look into the history of the Ku Klux Klan, they even had like the founder of the Ku Klux Klan come and speak at their conventions, which is insane. And this is a party that's still in office today, hasn't been shut down yet, and people vote for them. And somehow, black Americans vote for them in 90th percentile. 90th percentile. That's insane. That's absolute insanity. I don't know how. Like, just knowing this history. This is what like suppression of education does, because everything is suppressed to the point where this is what we get. We get public housing projects where people are just shoved into this little box, these mass trap houses. You can't earn more wealth than this number, otherwise you lose out on all your government handouts. So you got to stay poor. You can't get married, because if you get married, you lose this benefit as well. Insane. And this party's all been for this, and they just crippled minorities in this country. Absolutely insane. Let's keep moving forward. Okay. So now, after the Klan Bake, the National Committee Convention's nickname in the 1920s, 1964. Fast forward to 1964. So 40 years later, the Democrat Party led a 75 calendar day filibuster against the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Just think about that. For 75 days, they filibustered Congress to not allow blacks to get equal rights. When did this switch happen? The 60s? Because it doesn't look like it happened right here. If you're filibustering that time. Oh, we had a platform switch. It's total and complete lies. That's been fed to the media. That's been fed to the public. And the Republicans just have no cojones. They have no balls. They didn't shut this down back then. I mean, I don't know if like back then and just seeing it was like an easy thing to run against. It was easy issues to run against. Like they would just get their voters. They just wanted to sit in seats. But they're complicit too. Absolutely. Okay. So, 75-day calendar day filibuster against the Civil Rights Act. The leading Democrats in the opposition of the Civil Rights Act were among them Senator Robert Byrd. This is the same Robert Byrd that Joe Biden has pictures of praising. This is the same Robert Byrd that Hillary Clinton has pictures of praising, celebrating their life, calling them great people. And this guy also, Robert Byrd, he was known as He was known as a recruiter for the Ku Klux Klan. Now, one great thing about today is the Ku Klux Klan doesn't really exist as it did back then. Back in the day, you talk like the 20s, the 30s, it was rumored that they had like 10 million members. Today, it's looking like around 10,000. So that's a huge improvement over time. So this country made a huge switch. They made the huge switch to be all inclusive and be all about equal rights. So that's a huge plus to us. Otherwise the Ku Klux Klan would probably have a lot larger numbers, but everybody got kind of into it like this is BS. This is BS. These people aren't bad. They're not what they were made out to be for how many years. And I think a lot of that has to do with just the TV, bringing a lot of them to the front and center, having a lot of great Black Americans influencing our society and our culture, and us embracing it. So that speaks a lot to how things have improved since back then. But back in 1964, we had straight up racists in office, like blatant racists. Okay, and a lot of them were still getting elected even after the 60s too, which is insane. But they had a party platform switch, right? Okay. So, Democrats enacted and enforced Jim Crow laws and civil codes that forced segregation and restricted freedoms of Black Americans in the United States. And June 18th, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi ordered the removal of capital portraits of 4 previous speakers of the House who served in the Confederacy. All these people, these are all 4 of them. 1 was Democrat Robert Hunter. 2, Democrat Howell Cobb. 3, Democrat James Orr. And 4, Democrat Charles Crisp, which I gotta say, it's a pretty cool name. Chucky Crisp. But still, 4 Confederate Democrats. So do you think the Democrat Party is trying to erase their history? It kind of seems like that. They can't hide from this. This is all on the record. This has happened over time. So what are we doing? Why are we allowing these people to continue to run this country? It's beyond me. It's absolutely beyond me. It makes no sense. All right, and then after that, he starts listing off as part of the resolution. Now it says, 1, the Speaker of the House of Representatives shall remove any item that names, symbolizes, or mentions any political organization or party that has ever held a public position that supported slavery or the Confederacy from any area within the House wing of the Capitol or any House office building, and shall denote such item or symbol to the Library of Congress. 2, that any political organization or party that has ever held a public position that supported slavery or the Confederacy shall either change its name or be barred from participation in the House of Representatives. Insane. Of course, it's not going to go anywhere because Democrats control the House, but still, this is the Democrat Party. This is what they do. This is their history. And you want to talk about more of their history, just going from the 60s forward and talking about the war on poverty and what that did to hurt Black American communities. And then fast forward, you got Joe Biden's crime bill in 94, which threw how many Black men in prison, leaving more single parents, the illegitimacy rates going from the 20s to the 70s, from the single digits to over 30% in the white community. They just have been hurting all of Americans by oppressing them. They oppress votes. They create these voter farms, aka public housing plantations. That's what I call them, public housing plantations, because that's where they keep their voters in and they bust them out. Vote for them, otherwise they might remove your government benefits, those handouts. You gotta vote Democrat or they're gonna take away the handouts. Obama phones, food stamps, public housing, welfare checks, checks for each kid. They're like literally buying votes, and we are too ignorant to realize this. Nothing is free. Nothing is free. Free is a myth. Everything requires some sort of effort. Everything requires you to do something. Everything out there. Anything that's even considered free, it just doesn't exist. Even freedom doesn't truly exist, because you're free to the point that you do something that's outside of what society considers acceptable, you can end up in prison. So you can't say absolute freedom exists either. But it's a fine line. You know, we're free to have certain unalienable rights, and that's where the line is drawn. Once you step outside of that, once you start harming other people, then it starts coming back. And once you start harming other people, you got to look at who's been harming the people. Now, I always say, like, when you look at a statue, if they're taking down a statue, statues can't talk. They say nothing. They say absolutely nothing. Flags, all they do is wave. Doesn't say anything. Absolutely nothing. But these Democrats have been running their mouths for hundreds of years, oppressing people openly. Openly. All this is on the record. Feel free to fact check all of it. And these people are still in office. They haven't paid. They have not paid for what they did to us Americans. They did not pay for how they just held back people for almost 100 years, prevented them from voting to the very last stand, standing there 75 days to try to keep them from gaining equal rights with all other Americans. And like I refuse to look at it like as if they're not Americans, which is kind of how they try to make it seem. You guys were slaves, you guys don't have a say, blah, 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 we're not going to let you vote, we're not going to let you do this, or you're going to have to use your own bathrooms, you got to stay away from us. Like, they kept this division for 100 years. The Democrats kept this division for 100 years. Now, I'm not going to put all the guilt on them, because Republicans have been complicit. They have sat back. They're way too soft. They're way too humble, I guess you could say. I mean, with humble not being, which is something that would be considered like virtuous as being humble, kind of. But if you're just like sitting back and you're letting people walk all over you, like it's hurting the country too, and that's what Republicans did as well. They just kind of let it fly. Okay. But this is your Democrat Party. This is who people vote for. This is somehow the party that 92% of Black Americans vote for. The party that was pro-slavery, pro-KKK, celebrated KKK lives, pro-segregation, anti-rights, anti-civil rights, didn't want you to vote, didn't want you to remove you from chains, and you vote for them. They're the ones that put you in these housing projects and expect you to vote for them. These are the ones that incentivize you to stay poor and expect you to vote for them. And like Joe Biden said, you ain't black if you don't vote for him. If you're questioning voting between Trump and Biden, you ain't black. That is obscene. He made another statement talking about they're going to keep you in chains. That is insane. I don't know how anybody who's a Black American in this country can honestly say that they're going to vote for the Democrat Party today, or going back 100, 150 years. If that 1850s was on the platform, being against abolitionists, would you vote for them then? Would you vote for them when they decided to suppress 130,000 Black American votes in Virginia? Would you vote for them then? Would you vote for them when they started the KKK party? Would you vote for them when they celebrated a recruiter for the KKK party? Would you vote for them when they decided that you don't deserve civil rights. You don't deserve equal rights as every American should have. Would you vote for them then? Would you vote for them that they decided to destroy the Black American family unit, knowing that fact? Can you vote for them? Can you vote blue? Is it possible? Does it make sense? Do you want to continue to hurt yourself and everybody else around you? Do you enjoy having 8,000, 9,000 black-on-black murders and homicides every single year in this country? Do you enjoy that? Do you enjoy the stories of families who can't have a dining room table inside their house in fear that gunshots and bullets are going to come flying through the window and hit them while they're eating dinner? They got to eat dinner on the floor. Are you pro 4-year-old little girls getting shot in their sleep? Are you for that? You voting blue, you're voting for that. It's time to end the Democrat Party. I'm hoping for a Democrat implosion 2020. Trump isn't, he might be a douchebag, he might be an asshole, but he's not out there killing thousands of people every single year with their policies. He's not out there oppressing millions of Americans in this country, shoving them into buildings. That's the Democrat Party. Wake up. Wake up. It's time for a change. It's time to remove the Democrat Party from our entire lives. I'm done. I can't talk anymore about this. If you like what you hear, you want to subscribe, feel free to share this. Kenny B. Unchained. This is like 6 episodes in. I'm going to keep running with this. I was dedicated doing one a week, but now I'm going to do multiples. And I'm just really worked up over this. And it's just not right. It's not right. The Democrats, we got to put an end to them. They got to be removed from this country entirely. They are a cancer in the United States of America today. Absolute cancer. When you look up their history, they're a cancer. Other than that, have a great weekend, guys. Peace.